Hi everyone, this is me, Cubone, and this is what I created this year for Halloween. It's an above life-size Cubone skull, which you can wear. But in this video I will not focus about how to print it, because it's basically just downloading the Thingiverse files and printing them in the proper scale, which was about 150% in my case, and gluing them together. That's it. In this video I will show you how you can transform the printed and glued together model into something like this. So let's get started.
I tried to keep this video relatively short but still informative, and I didn't record all parts. Nevertheless, you will see how I succeeded in creating my own Cubone skull. But first off, this video was heavily inspired by Make It Yourselves, who also created a skull like this already 2 years back. I highly recommend watching his video as well, and I will link it down in the video description. Another thing, I have printed all parts and glued them together in January already, and kinda forgot about it. The skull was printed on the ANET A8, even before the dual extrusion upgrade was installed, and at those times the printer wasn't properly configured, resulting in a slight deviation on the Y-axis. You will see these problems especially at the eyes, where there's an offset. Also, it seemed like the nozzle was partly clogged on some parts, resulting in these skipped layer lines. All parts were printed using 0.3mm layers with white or grey PLA, of which I have used a little bit over 2 spools, including 2 failed prints. For the glue, I've used Uhu Craft Glue, which is very common here in Austria and by far more common than the CA Superglue others use. I can highly recommend it. Filling in the epoxy was easier than expected, and it dried pretty quickly. Just so that you know, it was my first time using epoxy, and for that, it's good enough. After the epoxy was applied, I sanded everything down using rough 80 grit sandpaper. Especially for the convex areas, I used a sanding block, which is a very good help. Then it was time to start priming, but before you do any spraying, make sure to use a proper respiratory mask. In the European Union, they are the ones with the FFP3 certificate, which are good to use. I started out with the yellowish primer, as it was already open. It sprayed pretty quickly, but my lack of experience resulted in some paint runs, especially at the corners. However, they were sanded out pretty easily in the next step. Also, once the primer dried, I turned the model around to access the lower areas, but I didn't really care about the insides. After the primer dried, I used 120 grit sandpaper to increase the smoothness of the model and to get rid of any coarse parts. This resulted in a lot of scratches, and I hoped that they would be out at the next primer layer. After I was happy with the smoothness up to this point, I cleaned the model using running water and let it dry for like an hour. I continued priming using the old primer until it ran out. Then I switched over to the new one, turning the model grey. After about 4 layers it looked already pretty awesome, but there were some runs again, especially in the corners. After the mentioned 4 layers of primer, it was time to sand again. This time I upgraded to 180 grit sandpaper and did the steps like before. You could really feel the smoothness increase. Guess what was coming next? Priming again. Again 4 coats of the primer did the step for me, and after wet sanding with 400 grit sandpaper, the skull felt really smooth, even at the points where there were like the 0.3mm layer lines before. At some places I still exposed the epoxy and even the plain PLA, but it was very smooth this far and ready for painting. I painted the skull using matte white spray paint, and 4 layers were absolutely fine. I have especially taken care not to cause any runs again, but to spray evenly, and it worked out. After a wait of like 15 minutes to let the paint dry, I was happy with the result. Another contributing factor was probably the time of 11 PM on a Sunday evening, but well, there are a few lines left which I should have filled out using the epoxy in the first step. But other than that, it's pretty neat looking, and I'm very happy that I managed to do something like that. And now, the only task remaining is to glue in some foam to be able to comfortably wear it.
And yeah, that's it. It isn't that hard, but it takes some time. The post-processing alone took me nearly 2 days, and well, I'm pretty happy how it turned out, but if you inspect it closely you will find a few errors, like the layer lines you can see here. But other than that, I'm pretty happy with how it came out, and especially that I was able to do something like that. So it was a huge learning curve for myself, and I'm pretty happy and can only recommend doing something like this as well. But It's a little bit too large and I still need to add the foam inside. So that's it for this video. I hope that you liked it, and if you have any questions or any comments, feel free to leave them down below. Of course, I will link the other video and the model down in the video description, so make sure to check it out. So have a nice day and a happy Halloween. See ya!